live.
I will call to order the Public Safety Committee meeting for tonight. I am Michael Colon, Chairman of the Public Safety Committee. The other committee members are Councilwoman Olga Negron and Grace Cramsey Smith. Will the clerk please call the roll on the committee members?
Mr. Colon,
Present.
Ms. Negron,
Presente.
Mr. Cramsey Smith,
Present.
The other council members present tonight this evening, either in person or remotely, are Council President Adam Waldron, Councilwoman Brian Callahan, Councilman Willie Reynolds, and Councilwoman Dr. Paige Van Wert. Also, our City Council Solicitor, Jack Spurk, is joining us remotely. From the administration here tonight, we're joined by our Mayor, Bob Donchez, the Police Chief, Mark DeLuzio, our Deputy Chief of Police, Scott Mikesell, and our Police Captain, Michelle Cott. Tonight's meeting is for informational purposes only. There's not going to be any actions taken by council, and there will be no votes on any agenda items this evening. There are two main agenda items for discussion tonight. The first one being to discuss the City of Bethlehem police use of force policies and enforcement statistics. For this item, the police will discuss several reports which will be visible to those using the webinar application. And the reports that will be discussed tonight include the Bethlehem Police Department's use of force directives, version 3.1.1, the Policing in City of Bethlehem 2019 report, and third is a report on the use of force by the Bethlehem Police Department. The second agenda item is to discuss the proposed community engagement initiative. Councilman Reynolds and Councilwoman Cramsey Smith had proposed, and they will discuss their resolution number 2020-105, which is document number 4 in tonight's meeting packet. Just to summarize to everyone how tonight's meeting is going to be conducted, at the top of the meeting, I'll ask the mayor to make a statement and listen to his remarks. The police representatives will discuss the reports that I mentioned, those 3 reports. We will take questions and comments from the Public Safety Committee members regarding those reports. We'll then open it up to questions and comments from the other members of council. And then we will discuss the resolution. At the end of the meeting, I'll take public comments from anyone pre-registered to participate in the webinar application. And for that, I will go in alphabetical order for anyone participating via the webinar app. And then I will call anyone who had signed up to make comments tonight to council. We have 11 members of the public who I'll be calling. And then finally, I will ask if anyone wants to call the city council comment line. At that time, I'll announce the phone number here at a council chamber if anyone hasn't had a chance to comment yet, but would like to. Please note that tonight there will be a 5-minute time limit that's going to apply to all public comments, and calls will only be accepted during the public comment portion of this meeting. Before we do get started and I turn to our mayor, just a couple general comments I would to make about tonight's meeting. And starting with just a reminder of how we got here, everyone. On May 25th of this year, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, George Floyd had lost his life involved in an arrest with a Minneapolis police officer who had knelt on Mr. Floyd for close to 8 minutes. That incident found its way into all of our homes, on all of our cell phones, and became something that joined the public arena, and everyone in this country just about developed an awareness of and started conversations on. That, coupled with other incidents nationwide involving members of the public and engagements with police officers, had started conversations in multiple police departments and communities around the country, talking about use of force, talk about police training, talk about officer conduct. And here in Bethlehem, we had started some of those conversations. At that time, it was requested of the Bethlehem Police Department questions about the use of force policies and directives. And I thank the chiefs, I thank the captain present tonight for their continued transparency as it relates to putting information on the city's website. This is probably the 3rd public forum I've been involved in now with other community groups talking about some of these things. And we really want to have these conversations, and this potentially being the first of numerous conversations. But that's why this is the first conversation to be had, because these were the first questions that were asked as it relates to the use of force here in Bethlehem. And also, as we move through tonight's meeting, I want to remind everyone that different terms, different catchphrases that we keep hearing have different meanings depending on who the speaker is, depending on who the listener is. So as we hear terms like defunding the police, that these terms can mean whatever it is you want them to mean, and what you take them to mean could be different from those that's listening to it. So I ask everybody to be mindful of the context of the conversation and not just certain phrases or things like that are born out of certain conversations. And again, that our agenda tonight has nothing to do with abolishing or defunding the police. And lastly, I'll just close my comments as we get started here with, I really hope as a council, as a police department, as administration, as a community, we could really set an example in terms of listening to each other, trying to understand where different points of view are coming from. And the last couple of weeks, we've been getting, as council members, different correspondence, phone calls, emails, text messages from members of the community, people we know, members of our family, things like that, who are a little bit not really sure of what tonight's meeting was about. And then as we talk to them and try to have conversations, I just try to remind everybody to listen to what it is that's being discussed, try to listen to the comments of not only those who agree with your standpoint, but those who might disagree with your standpoint, so that we as a community can move forward and keep conversations going, not just today, but beyond today. And as we try to meet whatever goals we want to set forth, not just as a administration, as a police department, as a council, but really as a community. So that concludes just kind of a couple brief remarks I wanted to make as we get started. At this time, I'll recognize our Mayor Donchez to give any remarks he may want to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of council, and welcome to our online viewers and participants. Before we begin, I consider it important to repeat some things I have said about the Bethlehem Police Department. I am proud to be mayor of a city with a police department which enjoys an excellent reputation. That reputation was hard-earned from difficult experiences, leading to determination and hard work to implement reforms and to elevate our standards of professionalism. Bethlehem is the only department in Lehigh Valley that is accredited by the Commission of Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, CALEA, a national organization, and the Pennsylvania Law Enforcement Accreditation Commission. Our department works hard every day, every year, to retain those accreditations. Our department is involved in many aspects of the community: Cops and Kids, serving Thanksgiving dinner at New Bethany Ministries, organizing coat drives for the Bethlehem School District, the B-Pair program where Bethlehem Police assist in recovery, just to list a few. But I recognize that we are here to discuss legitimate issues about policing locally and nationally. We should take this opportunity for self-reflection and to critique ourselves, and if necessary, implement constructive recommendations that will continue to make the Bethlehem Police Department the best department in the Lehigh Valley. I look forward to a constructive discussion on these issues this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll move on to the first agenda item. I'll recognize our Police Chief, DeLuzio, along with any other police representatives, to discuss the department's use of force guidelines, enforcement statistics, and any other relevant information for tonight.
Give us a minute to get situated.
And just as we get started here, for reference, everybody has the packet that our clerk's office put together. The table of contents in the top right corner of each page is the corresponding document to go along with the meeting document. So as we move through not just the documents, but then questions, so Chief, what we'll do is let you go through all the documents. I'll ask council members to make note of any questions you have. And then once we kind of go through all the information, then I'll open it up for back and forth with questions. And then when we get into questions, if anybody just could please reference whatever document and page you're looking at, if there's a specific item that you want to address. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Mark DeLuzio. I'm the Chief of Police for the Bethlehem Police Department. To my right is my Deputy Chief, Scott Meitzel, and to his right is our Professional Standards Division Captain, Captain Michelle Cotton. And we're here to answer any questions you have on use of force and also to talk about community initiatives. To understand the police department's use of force policy, and other police policies, one must first understand the police department itself. Like people, all police departments are not the same. No two people are the same, and no two police officers are the same. To paint them all the same, to call all the officers the same, to compare everyone to one issue is prejudicial and wrong. That idea and those that promote it are part of the problem today, not the solution. The Bethlehem Police Department is a nationally and state accredited law enforcement agency. Bethlehem Police is one of only 4% nationwide with that dual accreditation. With that accreditation comes constant upgrading, modernization of all police policies and directives so that they follow the most current and highest standards presently out there. It took Bethlehem Police from 2002 to 2007 to reach its first full accreditation. 5 years of work. In those 5 years, every directive, policy, piece of equipment, function we do was gone through and scrutinized. It was no easy task. It took us 5 years to achieve the excellent accreditation level we have today, being one of that 4% nationwide. Over the years, we've continuously been re-inspected, scrutinized, tested, and repeatedly passed and been reaccredited multiple times. As we do with every policy or directive, our use of force directive is very comprehensive. It follows the best standards, practices, and state and federal laws and guidelines available today. It is strict. BPD officers must report and document all uses of force actions. We report and document many actions that many police departments do not include in their use of force. Our use of force directives cover force, deadly force, non-lethal force, de-escalation, and crisis intervention. Each year, officers are retrained, requalified on all components of it, from deadly force to de-escalation. Training does not only include 16 hours of MOPEC, Municipal Police Officers Training and Education Commission training. That's required by the state. Our requirements are higher. We train more, and specialized units train even more. Recently, I released a use of force report by the Bethlehem Police. The report shows use of force cases in the city over a 5 and 10 year period. That report is online. There's 11 pages of statistics. In a 5-year period, over 13,650 arrests. Bethlehem officers used force only 635 times to initiate that arrest. That's 4.6% of the time. Now, statistics are statistics. We know that. One can render their own view about them. The use of force is not based upon any one person. It's based upon the resistance offered by a subject when he or she is being arrested. The numbers show that. Most people do not physically resist arrest. Resistance is the key factor here. No other things play into that. The subject and his actions determine the level of force used by the police officer. No resistance, no level of force by the officer. Call volume, location of calls within a city, population density, economics all play into those factors also. Deputy Chief Meitzel and Captain Cott will go into detail on that part of the policy. New legislation in Pennsylvania has been introduced recently. I think it's great. Within that legislation, there are calls for MOPEC to update their standards and training, and I agree with that 100%. New legislation has called for all police departments in Pennsylvania to be accredited, from small departments to large departments, receive crisis intervention and de-escalation training, bias training, diversity training, etc. Bethlehem has had these courses of training and has them incorporated in its present day directives. And that's due to accreditation. As in every profession, there will always be changes made. Bethlehem Police has no issue with that. We already change and upgrade and improve every year. We strive for the best policies and best standards available. Bethlehem Police is composed of 154 members, male, female, all different nationalities and genders. We're members of the community just like you. We're no different because of what we do. We have family, friends, neighbors, They all shop here, work here, and many reside in Bethlehem. Officers perform their jobs every day and engage in the community every day. We provide dozens of community functions every year, community initiatives every year. This year, due to COVID, is our only exception. We will talk about what we do when we get to the community initiative part of tonight. As chief and a police officer for 40 years this June, I consider the Bethlehem Police Department and all its officers the best municipal police department, in this state. And I will continue to support and remind you of that fact throughout these times. And I'll answer any other questions, but I'd like to turn it over to the deputy chief and the captain to start on the use of force presentation.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Scott Mikesell, Deputy Chief of Police for the City of Bethlehem. Before Captain Cock gets into some statistics, I'm going to talk a little bit about our use of force policy. Our policy 3.11, is reviewed yearly. Not only is this department policy, but is required yearly due to accreditation standards. As talked about already and as published in Morning Call, Bethlehem is one of only 4 departments in the state with a national accreditation and one of only 120 out of over 1,000 police agencies with Pennsylvania accreditation. Bethlehem was the first department in Lehigh Valley to release its full unredacted use of force directive as well as comprehensive statistics. Our policy is divided into 12 sections: justification for the use of force, our use of force model, levels of resistance, levels of force and control, use of force considerations, use of deadly force, restrictions on the use of deadly force, chokeholds and strangulations, post-use of force medical attention, reporting, employee actions or use of force in an official capacity resulting in death or serious physical injury, and training. There have been 2 recent changes to our use of force policy to clarify standards that were already current practice but were not specified in the use of force directive. The first being chokeholds and strangulations. While not taught or used by the department as a means of control, the following statement was added to the use of force directive to clarify our position. Department members shall not use chokeholds or strangulation techniques as a means of control, except as a last resort during a life and death struggle. Second part added to our directive was on intervention. An officer's duty to intervene was already a portion of other department directives. The following statement was added to the use of force directive to incorporate intervention into the use of force directive. When practical, officers shall intervene through verbal or physical means to prevent physical harm to the subject as a result of the misapplication of force. It should be understood our authority to use force comes from the Pennsylvania Crimes Code, Title 18, Section 508. A peace officer or any person whom he has summoned or directed to assist him need not retreat, desist from efforts to make a lawful arrest because of resistance or threatened resistance to the arrest. He is justified in the use of any force which he believes to be necessary to effect the arrest and of any force which he believes to be necessary to defend himself or another from bodily harm while making the arrest. However, he is justified in using deadly force only when he believes that such force is necessary to prevent death or serious bodily injury to himself or such other person, or when he believes both that such force is necessary to prevent the arrest from being defeated by resistance or escape, and the person to be arrested has committed or attempted a forcible felony or is intending to escape and possesses a deadly weapon, or otherwise indicates that he will endanger human life or inflict serious bodily injury unless arrested without delay. This is further detailed in our use of force directive under the justification for the use of force. The purpose of use of force by a police officer shall be to establish control and or maintain a level of advantage to defend himself or another person from bodily harm as defined in the Pennsylvania Crimes Code. Department law enforcement officers shall only use reasonable force, including deadly force, to effect lawful objectives in conformance with the provisions of the Pennsylvania Crimes Code, other Pennsylvania statutory provisions, and applicable Pennsylvania and federal court decisions. The level of force used by an officer will be determined by a subject's actions. When using force for defense or control, the officer shall continually assess the existing threat level and de-escalate or escalate the level of force applied so that it changes. Determining the decision based upon each use of force. It is not so long
The two provisions which outline totality and Tennessee. These can unfortunately policies. That's a little.
And Captain, the city of Bethel. Captain. Before we as mentioned, due to our that is then the patrol is then finally reviews was complete or was are used are taken and this to conduct which work any or policy. I'm going to report.
Thank you. Two.
Excellent. Sir, would you pause for a second?
And then we're
Correct.
so that would all right.
So table is from 2000. Force you by how many times by Beth. Note that in 2000 to present that when a during it whenever discharge forces or applies as the document. Go to pace. As documented when officers more than in hand So the next table, we're used. For example, out of the chairman. Similar our use of is for therefore for 2000 as the policy that more data that are next is total use at the bottom, and that sometimes is that individual that so for an individual an instance whereas out of use of an in and needed as doctor even if that, that they and what but it's still do the page 8 and that was for the fun there were the total 600 therefore and that's rest it was not just statistics and the use
With the, so
hello 1 2 3
thank, is it your mate? and the
Yeah.
Now.
everyone follow starting where the issue